Hi, good afternoon. It's great to be with you. Hello from New York. And I'm here to talk about this year, this long year of pandemic. And I know it's more than 1 year, it's 19 months for all of us, but it feels like one unending stretch of stop and go and stop and go. And our lives are disrupted in many, many ways. So, in order for us to move ahead, what do we need? And to order for us to move ahead our clients. Next slide, please. So what we need, okay. There is an entrepreneur and author, Adriana Huffington, who came up with the word of the year. In case you didn't know, the Webster Dictionary adds one word per year and also announces the word of the year. So Huffington offered resistance. So why resistance? Because this is the only thing that can move us ahead. Next slide, please. Next slide. So I propose a system of dynamic resistance. So what is dynamic resistance? This is our ability to to adapt to complex risk situations, to support, promote therapeutic change, ascertain our stability, find the optimal functioning, and of course, practice self-care. And this concept actually did not, the concept of dynamic resilience did not come from psychology. It came from the environmental science. And it includes this mechanism that looks a little bit like the inside of your clock, right? Those tiny interconnected wheels that move together but also are independent. And it consists of our reserve, what we actually have, our supply, our emotions, or how much resilience we already have stored, our food supply, maybe our toilet paper supply, what we do in certain situations, our situational awareness, how quickly we respond to the new situation, our ability to change the initial plan and adapt it to the changing moment, our ability to regenerate. So if all of that works together, we can move ahead quickly, efficiently, and we can move our clients ahead. So let's talk about our clients. Next slide, please. Let's talk about our clients a little. We are looking, right, yes, this one. Okay, we are looking at 3 diagnostic categories that became really prominent in the last 19 months. We are looking at acute stress, and this is something more immediate. This is our immediate response, mobilization of our autonomic nervous system. I will talk about autonomic nervous system a lot because this is our way to deal with the world and with whatever stressful or frightening events that introduce themselves. And we can feel palpitations, we can feel some gut discomfort, we can experience difficulty breathing, we don't sleep as well, we lose sleep actually. Fight, or freeze goes into effect. But for those of us who already experienced some sort of stress, natural disaster, war, we come up with a very different response, which is way more prolonged. It's post-traumatic stress. And post-traumatic stress disorder is something that starts after 6 months, and it comes with flashbacks, nightmares, avoidance behaviors, so many other behaviors that are truly disruptive. But let's hope that the most of our client population experiences adjustment disorder, and within the next 6 months they will experience those symptoms, and then things will slowly go back to normal. Next slide, please. But actually, things don't really go back to normal, not yet. Here's the illustration. We are sitting in our homes around the globe, and you are sitting in beautiful Sicily, or also at your screens around the world. Why is this happening? Because we are going through this disruption of social connectedness. And it affects our bodies, our motor system, right? Our senses, our sensory motor, emotions, the way we react, the speed of our reaction, and also moving thresholds, changes of mood, changes to work of our mirror neurons. So this is a multi-level systemic change to the way our worlds work. So what we're trying to do, we're trying to recreate a new hierarchy. So we continue to feed our physiology, to feed our brain, and to adjust our behavior to the new meaning. What's happening now is the recreation of the new meaning, future meanings, what it means to be together, what it means to function professionally and personally. Next slide, please. I want to go back to the subjective experience of danger that we all went through. And for me personally, well, I'm no different from anyone else. I also experienced stressful events, a number of events actually. Yes, a number of events that were happening in the course of those 19 months that I experienced as stress and sometimes perceived as danger to my well-being, to the health and well-being and lives of my family. And when this happens, I know that I go into fight or flight. I never go into freeze. Many people go into freeze, immobilized. But more common response, I think, is fight or flight. Be ready to deal with the danger. Mobilize your sympathetic nervous system. Once again, for those of us who already had this experience with danger, for example, I'm in New York City, we had 9/11. We also had the hurricane here in the city. It's in addition to personal stressors of different kinds, but basically we're pretty much in the same boat. If we had this previous experience, it intensifies our fight, flight, freeze response. And when this happens a lot and we don't fully relax and don't go into the parasympathetic mode, into rest and repose mode, and cycles repeat each other over and over again, we are dealing with an overwhelmed system. Next slide, please. And we proceed from the chronic, from our positive stress response. Okay, here I am. We have this nuisance that we need to deal with. We are ready to run and deal with it, or stay home, but it will end, and then I'll go back to work. And then I'll do what's needed to go over this stress. This is the positive stress response. We actually need this sympathetic response in order to survive. What would happen if we did not listen to the news, if we did not respond to the external cues? We would not survive as species. We would be long gone. However, yes, great, we have this positive stress response. We know what to do. But then it happens again and again and again. So we go from the tolerable level when the body's alert systems are activated and we're ready to run, the blood rushes to our limbs, we're ready to fight, we're ready to see where we're going, our pupils dilate, right? Physiology. From there, we go to the state of inactivation and actually not knowing what to do. And we go into the toxic stress response. And it occurs with a strong, frequent, prolonged adversity without adequate support. And this is actually something that disrupts the brain architecture. And it happens, as we know now, not just in our generation. That's something that affects our brain architecture and can be inherited by the next generation and next generation. So effects are pretty dire. We don't want to go there. We want to do it differently, right? Next slide, please. So let's talk a little bit about the states, the phases of disaster and where we are in the disaster. Let's try to locate ourselves. Yes, okay. So definitely we're, yeah, you just passed it. We are not in the pre-disaster mode. Dr. Vus, we just passed the slide. Okay. Anyway, we'll go back to that slide. And yes, another one with the graph. Right. We pre-disaster, it was somewhere beginning of 2020 where we heard some rumors, where we realized that something was not right, and the mass media was giving us mixed messages, and we don't believe those breaking news, right? They change every day. They just feed us the news. We were in denial. Then the impact actually occurred. People started getting sick. People started to die. And this is the point where we go into this emotional low. If you see on the left, that bar shows our emotional highs and emotional lows as a society. But then we go into the heroic state, right? All those doctors and nurses and communal service workers, essential workers who were there to help us as a society function. We go into the honeymoon stage where we feel the community is there to support us. Life is great. Then we go into this disillusionment where we stop believing the news. We no longer care about the news, and triggering events are happening. Riots, anger, crime, homelessness, unemployment, revolutions in some countries, right? So I suspect that we're still there in the disillusionment state. And what comes after that is actually apathy, when we no longer care. We don't watch the news, not because we don't trust the news, that too, but also because it no longer matters. Some people choose not to get vaccinated because what do they care? Other people choose not to follow rules or actively defy rules. So then hopefully we will go ahead and we will come to the end of pandemic and we will celebrate the anniversary. We will mourn those who we lost finally. We'll get to that point yet. It's ahead of us. And then we start reconstructing. A similar process happens to us emotionally. It's all measured against the emotional highs and lows, remember? So how do we move past the disillusionment into the reconstruction. Next slide, please. And how do we move from this peri-traumatic cycle that repeats itself over and over and over again with the triggering events into the repair cycle? Because every time we go through this partial recovery, we cannot fully recover from what's happening. And it happens over and over and over again. And by the way, these all adapted from works of Stephen Porges and Ed Tronick. And they both work with relationships. So we're not just talking about the societal global processes. We are talking about actual human relationships and how we respond to our friends and neighbors, how our patients respond to us, how we work with them. So I propose the next slide model. Okay, I have a metaphor for you. You know who are the passengers here, right? We are on this ship. We are in the middle of this terrible storm, this calamity. But have you noticed the way sailors walk? Right? They rock. They set themselves kind of they're bigger than life, right? They go from side to side. Why? Because they're trying to find their center of their core, their center of gravity. Every time the ship goes left, they go right a little bit intuitively. The ship goes leans forward, they lean back. They try to align with the core, with the center of gravity. That's the only way to survive, to rock with changing situations and changing times. Next slide, please. So how do we do it? How do we start the walk sailors do? Going back and forth and left and right and not ever falling. We work with ourselves. We start with self-regulation and mechanism of self-regulation. We try to grow and mature as individuals and situate ourselves in the world. We also, going back to the world, we rediscover and rebuild connections. And we create our own system of support. And this will help us to revitalize, take good care of ourselves. And also, last but not the least, to be intentional. This is our purpose in the world. That's why we are here instead of doing something else or not doing anything. And this is a new trend, do nothing, which I'll talk about doing nothing. This is good if we have this purpose. So next slide, please. So let's talk about our professional roles. We've been going through some changes too. And lots of people have been able to rock with the boat. We are the embodiment of mental health to other people. And it has nothing to do with the reality of the moment. But we provide this reality testing. We can always validate what they see or hear. We can help to work through denial and resistance. We provide health education, and this is crucial these days. With the move towards telehealth, we became the IT support. We talk our patients through the technicalities, and not all patients are up there. Elderly are not up there technically, but I witnessed so many elderly patients who actually became tech savvy, researching new apps, making connections, talking to people all over the world, recording their own videos, not TikTok, but still their own YouTube videos. So people are learning, but they rely on us for many of those things, new things in the world. And by giving them new tools, we empower them. And also the uniqueness of this situation is that we by default are fellow sufferers. So this really changes the dynamic of our relationship because patients ask more and more, how are you? Are you okay? I think your voice is changing. Are you talking too much? Are you coughing? Is your camera okay? You're off camera. Everything's working fine. So they are more curious about the person on the other end because we are the fellow sufferer. And whether they realize it or not all of them are fully insightful, but those who are more insightful recognize the fact that, yes, we are there. We are sitting and working through this pandemic. And to them, it's a symbolic betrayal because they no longer see themselves as sufferers among other sufferers. They see you as this person who works no matter what. Next slide, please. So no matter what means that we also have losses. We suffer through personal grief and loss. I know that I did in the course of that year, and I had to show up to work anyway because it was important for them, but it was also somewhat healing for me as well. We go through our own stress and anxiety. Sitting here in the session and thinking, okay, I hope I didn't test positive. This result didn't come back yet. Why am I sitting here with a patient? Oh, it's telehealth. Okay, good. So I'm not contagious. Am I contagious? Am I not contagious? What am I doing? Am I right? Am I wrong? How's my family doing? Somebody coughed in the morning. What it's all about. So we go through a lot of these personal stuff that we bring with ourselves. And this is our primary trauma. But also there is a secondary trauma of listening to their stories and listening to their losses. And I worked through the pandemic. I worked with a few healthcare professionals who were losing their patients, like multiple deaths, several deaths a day. And this is, to listen to it is extremely traumatic. I'm sure you will agree with me. Next slide, please. So, okay, I included here the stages of grief that all of you are familiar with: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. But Kobler-Ross did not put anxiety anywhere there. And don't you agree that grief is associated with anxiety? Well, my answer to it is that anxiety is present in all of stages of grief. It all comes with anxiety. And I think we come to the realization, I don't know if you will agree with me, and we will have Q&A at the end, I hope, that it all comes packaged with anxiety. And anxiety is going to be our primary target. Moving on, next slide, please. So another thing to overcome, if we look at those goals that we want to attain, mainly intentionality, which I believe is the primary key to it. It's the compassion fatigue. Compassion fatigue frequently gets in the way. We just talked about the secondary trauma. But also there is burnout. And burnout means that I'm not doing it because I feel I have to do it. This is my moral obligation. This is my professional ethical role. But I do it because otherwise I will lose my job. I won't get my paycheck and I will be penalized. And I cannot feel scared, or I cannot be weak. And let's say I'm afraid. That's what's going on now. I'm afraid to get vaccinated, but I have to do it. Otherwise, I will lose my job. So I go to work, but every day can be my last day because they don't take my feelings into account, and I'm burned out, overworked, underpaid, forced to do what I don't feel like doing. This all contributes to compassion fatigue. So we are not as effective. But what do we do? Moving on, Dr. Luz, next slide, please. Right. Okay. Yes, I didn't. That's fine. Yes, I didn't say much about yes, building new pathways. So another metaphor for you. Just imagine the rain. Really, really, really strong rain that starts to sculpt the landscape, our mental landscape. As the raindrops come down, new streams are being formed. So the next rain goes into those streams, into those little riverbeds. But by going through those riverbeds, it makes them wider, it makes them bigger. They're being shaped by this rain. So this is an ever continuing process. We create, and that's how we function. We create new meanings by using our current meanings, by using our frame of mind, using our beliefs and our ethic, but we also shape it with the new event that comes in and reshapes it. Next slide, please. And yes, being in the same boat, I would like to talk about the polyvagal process, because the polyvagal theory came to the forefront during COVID. Why? Because it was warning us all along. It was talking about just this, the social connectedness and how social engagement system helps us to function in the world. And also was giving us some ideas about how to repair disruptions to our social engagement system that is closely related and is an ancient and functional part of our autonomic nervous system. So I encourage all of you, those of you who are not familiar, to look into Dr. Porges's work. And there is a great book of exercises. I will mention some of them. I cannot get to all of them, but I would like you to do this research. I hope that I will get you interested, because we need to figure out what the safe context is. We need to build this safe context into our therapeutic sessions. And we will work on the neuroception of safety, creating the safe space, removing the predator cues, adjusting our head position. So we look like we are listening, head to the side, maintaining eye contact, but kind of tilting our heads a little. We don't bare teeth. We don't use high shirking sounds, but we add the acoustic cues of a loving mother. And we use this prosodic voice, sing-song voice, just to help the patient calm down. I don't know if this change in my voice was helpful and perceived, but if it came through right now in this presentation, I changed my voice from the presentation voice to the prosodic voice to reduce the tension. I hope you can hear it. And there are neural exercises that come with it that helps us re-engage the vagal brake, so we don't go into this fight or flight or freeze overworked mode. We pay attention to our own subjective experiences, to our bodies, where we are. I ask patients a lot. So at that moment you felt really stressed. Do you remember what it felt like? I told you I was stressed. I said, no, what did it feel like in your body? Oh, my stomach was like tearing apart. And my longtime patients know what I'm asking because I've asked them this question before. So they become observant. I don't have to ask them this question over and over again. They tell me, I felt this intense pain in my gut. I knew that I was being stressed. So they're making those connections, they're becoming aware, and by being aware, they start working with the problem. Same is true of becoming also comfortable with the personal narrative. And let us move let's move ahead to the next slide. And next slide, yes. So let me say a couple of words about the personal narrative of trauma. I'm sure that by now all mental health professionals understand the importance and know the importance of retelling of traumatic stories. And in connection with that, I would like to mention the paper that will come out in the Ведомости Lekarski, I think next volume, right, Dr. Vos? Do you know? So it will come out and it offers the narrative technique, heroic journey. I encourage you to look into it. It's a great resource. It's a fun technique. I spent 6 years kind of fine-tuning it. Patients love it. Patients love to mythologize their own stories and tell us those stories for their therapeutic healing. And let's move to the next slide. And these are just additional resilience tools that I would like to offer. Be flexible, list things that you're grateful for. It sets off dopamine release. If you do it every day, I prefer to do it before I fall asleep. Practice negative capacity. Be curious about the future. Look into the day with a, okay, surprise me now attitude. Be mindful and present. Remember to journal. So you raise self-awareness and also you self-ground as you put it on paper. I prefer pen and paper because it also builds the new neurological connection in my brain as I transfer this emotional content into words, into the graphomotor. And what I can say at the end is that just repeat words of great, insightful, courageous Viktor Frankl. When we can no longer change the situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. And then maybe we won't need the boat. Please show my last slide. Thank you very much. Happy swimming to all of us.
Thank you for your presentation. After the presentation, I started to wonder to figure out about two questions to mention in the presentation. First question, you mentioned regarding changing of role for mental health professionals in reasons of new restrictions, new circumstances of our life, increasing of IT in our real life. The future of mental health now is in a multidisciplinary field. This multidisciplinary team should include IT specialists and other specialists because all the things are connected. For example, today we met with a very huge problem. I mean, technical connections, other ways in order to present so technical become a global challenge. And second question is that also mentioned regarding some chronic stress, toxic stress, etc. But for you, it's also stress because it's new stress. You are living in your country right now. It's early morning, and so it's stress for you to make presentation. And we currently in Italy, and it is afternoon in this country. So it's really stress for you because you use this cross-cultural communication. So kindly thanks for your contribution. I highly appreciate what you also do. And I think your audience will be very interested to read more about yourself in your article. You are editor in the journal Mental Health Global Services, and you have new articles also in the psychology. So kindly thanks. Have a nice day, actually.
Okay, unfortunately, the audio is it's very. I will have to agree with everything you said because I know that you are a perceptive and wonderful clinician. What they cannot really hear you, so I suggest if there are questions, please